Just cleaning up some loose ends. We've rolled the engine run stand into the main shop and getting ready to pick it off there and attach the transmission to it and get it ready to set in the chassis. But one of the things I wanted to look at was the tach drive that runs off of the back of the generator. This is the one that was on the car and didn't seem to be moving, and this is a spare one that was in our pile of debris, so we can just put a screwdriver in here and that puppy is seized up tighter than a drum. So what's happened when we pulled it all apart, this collar here, is that this drive stem goes on the back, goes into the back of the generator, was sheared off, and the little collar that holds it into place with a little tiny screw was broken in half. We did have the other one and managed to take the collar off of it, and the little drive shaft appears to still be good, but we've got two of these drive units for the tachometer, easy for you to say, tachometer, that this one I believe turns, but it's stripped inside, and this one doesn't turn at all. And that looks, never say never, but looks like a non-serviceable item, because this one over here has got a couple of rivets in that we could certainly knock out and take it apart. There's a seam here, and this one here has a seam, but doesn't really seem to have the same kind of rivets. So being as that this one is no good, or at least seized up, maybe I'll try to take it apart first and grind these down and drill them out or something. I don't know. Probably end up having to take them both apart because neither one of them appear to be any good. We'll see what happens. But just one of these things we got to fix. There's a bunch of stuff that doesn't work, so you got to fix it. Okay, we took the one and had the two obvious pins and ground the ends off and knocked the pins out. Took the thing apart. Really all you have in there is a little gear and a big gear, and this, all this goop in here is grease that's been pumped in there over the years. So I haven't, my suspicion would be is that this little gear, yeah, it's got all the teeth stripped off it, but I'd have to look to make sure that's the case, or the big gear has got the teeth stripped off. We'll have to clean all this stuff up and get all the goopy grease out of there and see what the real story is here. But I suspect that those gears are just worn and not something's not meshing with something else, and that one's not driving. The other one, I mean, when you look at this, the other one shouldn't be seized up. You've got this down in here, so that's probably where it's seized up, is that shaft going through there. Could be this shaft going through here, so could be we'd take that other one and soak it real good, and maybe we can get it freed up without breaking it in half. We'll keep playing, see what we end up with. We couldn't stand it, so we went ahead and ground down the back side of the other one and pulled it apart. And what I was hoping, and what it looks like, the gears are still good in that one. So what I'm hoping to do perhaps is knock these two gears out of here, put them in the other one, because it has holes all the way through where they had rivets, and I can either rivet it back together or put a couple of little screws in there to hold it together. Rather than, I could drill holes in this one, I suppose. But I think I'm going to be able to make something work here. We'll get these pieces out and get them cleaned up. I think we've determined without question that this small gear in the first one is stripped and not meshing with the big gear. So hopefully we can get this out of here. Now you see that's free in there. So it's got to be this one. Yep, it's seized up. So we'll have to get that out of there and get it cleaned up. And hopefully we can make one good one out of two. We're in the middle of this project, and we thought it'd be pretty simple to take these two apart and maybe make one good one out of two. One of the things that we figured out right away is that this piece is worn out, and what's happened is that it's the bushing in there. It's not really a bushing. The hole in there is all woggled out, and that allows that gear to just flop around, and that's probably what ultimately led to the gear being stripped. And I think there's no real bushing in there. You just have this steel rod running in that. I don't know if that's aluminum or pot metal or what it is, but that's worn out. So, and we thought, okay, well, we'll just take the other one, and we cleaned it up, and we got the gear in there, and it seems pretty straightforward. But then we got this piece, and this gear was pretty tight in there, so we thought, okay, maybe it'll fit better in there. Let's see. And boy, it turns real nice in there. But these pieces, because of the way they were fastened together, don't want to go back together. So what we're going to have to do, I guess, is grind these down on here flush, and then put this thing together and drill through here into the other housing, and then we'll put it together with a couple of screws or a couple of rivets. So it's going to just take a little bit more work. But I think the problem is that putting that main gear in the original housing, for some reason, it's just too tight. And it's just not going to work very well. I suppose we could work on opening that hole up a little bit. We might try that. But what you end up with is both of these have a little groove right down here. And the idea is that you're supposed to get some lubrication down in there and keep that from seizing in there. And I would say, based on the design of things, that's hard to accomplish. A lot of people put grease in these things. There's a grease fitting goes in there, and you really can't do that because these gears, the way they operate, just push the grease out away from the gears, and then the grease gets hard and gums up the whole works, and nothing gets lubricated. If you put oil in there, it's thin enough that odds are it's going to run out. So we either have to put fairly heavy oil in there that's not going to run out, or we have to find some lubricant to go in there that will lubricate the gears, get down into the area where the shaft goes in, and keep things running smoothly. Otherwise, this other piece will wear out the same way. So we're going to have to put a little thought into that. We'll go ahead and get this piece here cleaned up, get those pins ground out of there, and see if we can get the whole thing back together. And then we'll worry about what kind of lubricant we can put in it. I don't think anybody ever intended these things to come apart in the first place. So, but a new one is, I believe, $100 or more. So for $100, we'll see if we can save it. got our tachometer gearbox drive figured out, I think, I hope. Not quite sure. Put a couple of marks on there before we took it apart so that we could put it back together the same way. We've drilled out our rivets, run a tap through there, and put a couple of 1032 screws through there. And the big thing now is to get it to turn freely, and we've had a little bit of trouble getting it to turn freely. These, you got to be careful how tight you make these screws here, because they want to compress the cover, and you get a little drag right there in the operation of the gears. So I'm not quite sure what's causing that. If we just open it up a little bit, then we got that, everything's free, and we just ever so slightly snug that cover up, we've got a little drag. So I've got to sort that out. There's something in there that's the gears hitting on the face in there or something. I'm gonna just have to get after that, because the idea would be then just to snug these up just tight enough to hold it together. Put a little small, we call them jet nut, a little locking nut on the back side to keep it tight, and then it should work for us. We'll see. Like right there, it's not too bad. It's got a little spot right there, and I just don't know why that is. So there we go, that way. Let's try this one. So it's on this side here. Just loosen it up a little bit, and boy, that's really good there. The problem is if you loosen it up too much, then you're going to leak your lubricant out around the seam. So we're going to have to play with this a little bit and figure out just how tight to make these screws, and then what kind of lubricant to put in there that we're not going to have it run out all over the place. And I think it'll work okay for us. Right there, boy, it's just really just ever so slightly. It's incredible. Got to be a little burr or something in there. There's some reason why tightening that up causes that to bind up. I can't believe that it's caving in this lid that much, but we'll figure it out. We'll get in there and clearance the cover a little bit under the gear. That might help. We took one screw out and just ever so slightly aligned our cover a little better, and I think now we've got a nice smooth action there. So I think one of our holes here was off just a little bit. We're going to have to open this side of that up a little bit, and then when we put it together, we're going to have to make absolutely sure that these grooves are lined up spot on and that our edge is flush all the way around. I think the cover was just shifted a little bit before, and the gears were running not quite on center. So I think if we do that, we'll be in good shape. Got our new dog on there, turning freely. I put some real heavy gear oil inside, essentially so that it got some lubricant and it wouldn't just get forced out between the gears. So the oil's fairly heavy, so it's a little sluggish here, but it's turning smoothly. I think we'll be all right. In the meantime, going through my stash of stuff, I found a brand new collar and drive dog in the spare parts, so that's good. And here we already have our choke cable and our starter cable and we had them soaking in a pan of old oil just to let it seep through the housing, and got them freed up so they moved nice and free, so they'll be ready to go. Based on our carburetor setup, I don't think we're going to need the slow run cable. It wasn't in there anyway. All that's in the dash is the end of the cable, just this part. The whole cable's missing. So obviously the last guy decided he didn't need it either. But real close to time to hang this transmission on the back of this engine and get it in the car.